The purpose of our narratives is purely for entertainment. My name is Dave, I am 55 years of age, and I am the proprietor of a garage. What distinguishes this garage from others is that I constructed it from the ground up. I commenced my career at the age of 18, working under the guidance of my uncle. After saving for several years, I established my own garage. The initial years were fraught with challenges, and I worked assiduously to ensure its success. Over the subsequent 30 years, it grew into the thriving enterprise it is today. Did I fall in love? Indeed, I did. I met Jenny at an automotive exhibition while she was still a university student. We immediately established a connection and exchanged contact details, subsequently deciding due to the geographical distance between our respective residences, our communication was limited to telephone conversations. Several months later, we met again, and this time our meeting concluded at my place. It was a significant moment because it was her first time. A few months later, Jenny encountered financial difficulties following the death of her parents and the jeopardy of her university fees. I was aware that she was the person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with, so I provided financial assistance using my savings to support her studies. She was deeply moved and embraced me, expressing her overwhelming gratitude. 5 years later, Jenny moved in with me and secured a job as on a Sunday. We visited a local law firm and proceeded to embark on a 3-hour hiking expedition, culminating in the summit of a nearby hill. As we basked in the panoramic view of the cityscape, Jenny suddenly got down on one knee and proposed marriage. I was taken aback, yet delighted to accept. She presented me with a ring, symbolizing our eternal bond. 3 weeks later, we held a small, intimate wedding ceremony. Over the next 2 decades, our lives were rich and fulfilling. We welcomed 2 children, Maria, aged 19, and James, aged 18. Both have now attained independence, with Maria pursuing her university education. Subsequently, James assumed the role of lead guitarist in a local rock band, and our children had reached an age of independence. I was gratified with my circumstances, having never pursued higher education and having been perceived as a formidable individual, a perception that I found agreeable. However, with the passage of time and the advent of Jenny's 20th year of marriage, I became increasingly aware of her inner workings, including her thoughts, behaviors, and even her deceptions. She began to work late frequently at her new job, which she had assumed a year prior. The position offered greater remuneration and prestige, and her new boss, a renowned lawyer known for I had no particular affinity for the profile of court cases. After observing Jenny for approximately 3 months, I confronted her about her late nights at the office. I am typically a gentle soul, but this time was different. After about 20 minutes of intense questioning, she finally broke down and confessed to having an affair with her new boss. I had a straightforward question: why? I told her, "You married the same man I was 20. Despite the passage of time, my fundamental characteristics have remained unchanged. I adhere to traditional standards of modesty in my attire and appearance, and I may not conform to the prevailing norms of physical attractiveness. However, I have consistently fulfilled your expectations as a husband and provider for our family. If you are seeking a superior alternative, someone you can proudly introduce as your equal, you are likely searching for a dominant alpha male." I gazed at her and inquired, "Are you leaving our 25-year-long marriage just because I don't fit into your social gatherings and don't dominate or mistreat you? Does that make me? I am accused of being a bad husband. I provided for our 2 children through their college education and supported your journey to becoming a lawyer. However, I am now deemed inadequate." She attempted to assert her position by stating that you should understand and accept this situation. She then proceeded to declare that she would be with her new partner and that you should do the same, or else she would initiate divorce proceedings and seek to have your assets and earnings seized. She further threatened to embroil you in lengthy and costly legal battles, which would require you to spend your life in court and on the streets. She even went so far as to suggest that she would take away your most prized possession, I informed her that I would be prepared to take legal action to repossess the garage, which she had built over the years. She responded by stating that she believed she could initiate a legal process and take everything away. I advised her that this would be an uphill battle and that she would be unlikely to succeed. She attempted to speak further, but I did not allow her to do so. I left the house the next morning. I caught a glimpse of Jenny, but I did not speak to her. I left for work without uttering a single word. Once I was gone, Jenny reached out to her lover. She greeted JN and noticed his upset demeanor. She informed him that I had discovered their affair. On that morning, John confronted Jenny, prompting her to confess everything. John acknowledged the complexity of the situation but reminded her that it was not catastrophic, given that they had previously contemplated such a scenario. Jenny admitted knowing this but expressed how difficult the reality was, highlighting their long history together, including their marriage and children. She then queried John about his conversation with me, to which he admitted he had followed their predetermined narrative without denial. He proceeded to elucidate the deficiencies in his ability to deceive. He informed me that Jenny, a successful career woman and lawyer, sought a partner who would exhibit greater dominance and equality to her stature, which was in stark contrast to her previous marriage to a mechanic. Jenny acknowledged John's summary but requested that they refrain from disparaging me excessively, citing my contributions to the family. She reflected on our conversation, recalling her desire for a partner like JN, which she now perceived as justified. However, she was reminded of the support I had provided over the years. JN inquired if she had revealed all to me, including the potential consequences of a divorce supported by her company. Jenny confirmed that she had done so, but my indifference to those factors and disbelief at being discarded despite my loyalty pained her. She attempted to explain her feelings to me, but doubted that I understood, expressing her fear of losing me. JN reminded Jenny of her admiration for his physical attributes and the intimacy they shared, which she had allegedly not experienced with me. He promised to continue. In order to provide her with what she felt was missing in our marriage, JN asserted his position as the alpha male in her life. He planned to confront me with documents that were intended to intimidate and overwhelm. These included orders to keep me away and freeze my company's bank accounts. JN used tactics that were meant to confuse Jenny. He expressed uncertainty and indicated that he was haunted by my reaction that morning. This was in relation to the complex emotions involved in their affair and its impact on our marriage. This was in the afternoon, around 2 p.m. The individual who perceived himself to be the dominant figure arrived at my residence. He alluded to the possibility that Jenny had informed me of their continued interactions and then suggested that I might have to accept this situation. He then proceeded to place his briefcase on the ground and began to boast about his ownership of the company where Jenny was employed, as well as his access to numerous attorneys proficient in winning cases, particularly those pertaining to divorce. He was quite forthright in his statements. He proceeded to present a series of documents which he had prepared for filing that morning, including a divorce petition that Jenny had signed. Additionally, he presented a document that froze the accounts of my company, an order that required me to vacate our residence within a day, and 4 restraining orders that prohibited me from contacting Jenny, her residence, and their place of employment. He made it clear that he intended to engage in prolonged and costly legal battles until I was financially distressed and desperate. He acknowledged my superior physical strength but asserted that superior intelligence would ultimately prevail. He proposed that we maintain the status quo, with him seeing Jenny and me on a regular basis. He anticipated that he would eventually tire of her and that she would return to me. He concluded by stating that if I had been everything Jenny needed, this situation would not have arisen. He advised me to seize the opportunity to enhance my personal growth and assert myself more with Jenny. He claimed that he gained her attention by demonstrating decisiveness, not by being the most amiable individual. I inquired when I would comprehend the true meaning of being an alpha male. I decided that actions conveyed more meaning than words. I advanced and struck him with a powerful blow, causing significant damage. He ended up leaning against the wall, appearing shocked. His uninjured face served as my first lesson to him, before he could fully process the pain. I proceeded to lift him up, only to knock him down again, leaving him on the floor. This was lesson number 2. Then, my boot came down on his hand, breaking several bones and 3 ribs. I then informed him that these were lessons 3 and 4 and asked him to calm down, as I was attempting to teach him something. I had to break a promise I had made to myself to never use my size and strength for harm. I had intended to keep him out of Jenny's affairs until he provoked me. Even a gentleman has his breaking point. I then placed my foot on his throat to make sure he was paying attention. I explained to him that the term alpha male comes from how wolves operate. I informed him that he might think he was the alpha in his office, but in the real world, he was not. In the wider context, he was perceived as failing to meet the standards expected of him. I highlighted the lack of a witness, which I saw as a misstep. I presented him with a range of potential courses of action. He could either report me and face the consequences, or he could accept responsibility for his actions and learn from the experience. I informed him that I considered our interaction to be inappropriate and that he should leave me alone. John informed Jenny that he had been admitted to the hospital after spending 3 hours in the emergency room. He had been treated for injuries sustained during an altercation with me, which he had initiated without first consulting with his colleagues. The injuries included a broken nose, several broken ribs, and a possible fracture of the cheekbone. Jenny was incredulous, stating that she was unaware of any history of violence on John's part. John maintained that the incident had indeed occurred and even offered to show her the X-rays. Jenny was astonished, struggling to comprehend the notion that I could perpetrate such an act. She contemplated the possibility of deterring John from pursuing legal action, emphasizing that despite the circumstances, I did not merit incarceration. John informed her that the police had already contacted him, yet he fabricated the narrative, claiming that he had been struck by a hit-and-run driver. I informed the driver that I would pursue legal action if he pressed charges, which prompted him to remain silent to avoid further harm. The following day, Jenny visited John in the hospital to recount her experience of driving around without knowing if it was safe to return home. She also informed him that the locks had been changed and that all of their bank accounts had been emptied and their credit cards rendered unusable. She inquired as to whether John could assist her by enlisting the aid of one of his divorce attorneys to facilitate her removal from the marital residence. She also sought his permission to remain in his company until such a time as she was able to secure alternative accommodation. John declined, citing the inherent risks involved, and even terminated her employment, offering her 4 weeks severance pay if she resigned immediately. He informed me that he had dismissed her. Jenny was in a state of distress, pointing out she revealed that she was left with nothing but the clothes on her back. John expressed his fear and insisted that he was merely trying to survive. He called her actions pathetic and criticized her for thinking she was trading up by being with him, calling her delusional for being serious about someone willing to cheat on the same day. Jennifer sat in her silent car on the side of the road, her credit cards declined and her bank account empty. She was unable to obtain credit, and her funds were depleted. I had not considered that canceling her phone service could be perceived as calculated cruelty. She was driving towards the city where her 2 children now lived, seeking refuge in all the years they had never let more than an hour pass before responding to her messages. She had initiated contact with them that morning after 10, the time is 00 a.m. Upon checking her messages once more, she discovered that none had been received. Jenny exhaled and retrieved her handbag, which was of no use to her, before stepping out of the vehicle. She adjusted her skirt and approached the roadside, holding out her thumb in the hope of attracting attention. I approached in a beaten-up van and was unable to suppress a smile as I observed the solitary woman on the roadside. I would not categorize myself as an alpha male, even though I was aware that loners could never be described in such a way. Apex predators hunt alone. I stopped the van near her and she appeared shocked. She seemed to consider running, but her body refused to move and she stood there frozen. I climbed down and asked her to get in. I invited her to enter the vehicle and proposed a discussion. She accepted and I instructed her to prepare the divorce papers. I specified that there would be no alimony and that she would retain ownership of her assets. In return, she would retain ownership of her personal property, including jewelry purchased by me. She was free to state any reason for this decision. With regard to the divorce, I am indifferent as to the outcome, provided that you are no longer a part of my life. Following the conclusion of the divorce proceedings, you will vacate the premises and refrain from any further contact. You may communicate with my children and arrange to meet them, should you so desire. Your personal effects will be prepared for collection from the residence by 10 o'clock. 00 a.m. tomorrow morning, you are required to collect them. If they are not collected by 11 a.m., they will be destroyed. She acknowledged this and I inquired about the time frame for the divorce papers. She stated that it would take a week, to which I replied that they should be on my desk within the next 5 days. She nodded again as I looked at her. Her demeanor suggested that she was experiencing a sudden and profound emotional response. I smiled, asked her to leave, and then drove away the next morning at 10:30 a.m. She had retrieved her belongings and 5 days later delivered the divorce papers, citing irreconcilable differences. I subsequently experienced a sense of liberation, becoming a free man. However, I do regret the dissolution of my marriage, as well as Jenny's inability to grasp the concept of loyalty. I also regret her belief that I was incapable of changing my appearance to become a more presentable husband. She failed to understand that she could have been seriously hurt if a 6'5" guy attempted to dominate her in bed. I would have attempted to save my marriage by talking to my wife, but she chose to threaten me with consequences, which represented a tipping point for me. I will continue my life independently and may eventually pass away alone. Story 2. A while ago, I had a relationship with a girl that turned out to be rather unfortunate. She was excessively controlling and offensive, and eventually, our relationship deteriorated, leading to our separation. I proceeded with my life, and after a few years, I secured a suitable job that met my basic needs, afforded me a comfortable lifestyle, and enabled me to save some money. Then, a few months into my new job, my ex-girlfriend, my former girlfriend, contacted me to request a conversation. I initially assumed that she might want to reconnect or discuss something important. I was therefore surprised when she arrived with a 5-year-old child. I was contacted by a 17-year-old male who claimed to be my son and demanded child support. I was initially skeptical, but the child's age matched the period since we had last been in touch. I sought advice from a friend who was also a lawyer, who suggested trying to resolve the matter without involving the court. I proposed taking responsibility, covering all expenses, and actively participating in the child's life, contingent on a DNA test. Everyone agreed to this plan except my ex-girlfriend. My girlfriend reacted with indignation and demanded the money she believed she was entitled to. She employed various excuses and even contacted my family to accuse me of evading responsibility for her child. When she exhausted her excuses, we proceeded with the DNA test, the results of which were shocking. It transpired that I was not the father. The father was enraged by the result and complained about the money, stating that it was unjust and that she was entitled to it regardless. Fast forward to last week, when there was a small gathering at my parents' house. My brother, a friend, and I engaged in a conversation. My brother began to make light of the situation. Jokes were made about the situation with my ex-partner, and my friend and I joined in with some remarks that took a somewhat dark and inappropriate turn. We believed that we were far enough from the rest of the partygoers, safely hidden on the opposite side of the house, and that no one else could overhear us. Amidst our laughter, my sister suddenly stormed in, visibly angry, and pushed me against the wall. She had inadvertently overheard our conversation and was extremely upset. She proceeded to scold us. She was vehement in her disapproval of our behavior, which she perceived as insensitive towards a woman in a disadvantaged position. A few hours later, after the party had ended, she requested my presence in the kitchen, where she proceeded to express her displeasure about the aforementioned situation. It transpired that my ex had contacted her and taken her side, which she interpreted as an opportunity for an intervention. My brother and I were taken aback when she asserted that I had compelled my former partner to become a single mother and that I was morally obliged to provide her with assistance. My father merely observed that we may have been unduly harsh in making jokes about her, but he emphasized that I was not responsible for the child's existence. My mother then interjected, stating that even if the child is not biologically yours, you can earn sufficient income to support them and that you should have helped her since then. I have been receiving text messages from my father and brother, who are supporting my position and asserting that I am not. I am responsible for my ex-partner's situation. However, my sister continues to berate me, accusing me of ruining their lives. My mother, however, simply said it is my decision and I respect it. I am just very disappointed that you have turned out to be so selfish. I recognize that my ex-partner does not deserve my money and I have no intention of giving her any. However, the constant harassment from my sister trying to make me feel guilty is truly draining. It has been a while since my last update, after my previous post. I perused the comments and elected to share them with my mother. We engaged in a discussion about the situation. Initially, she aligned with my ex. However, as she read the post and all the comments and opinions, she came to recognize her mistake. What seemed to hurt her the most were the doubts about whether my ex had cheated on my father and whether I was his biological son. These concerns may have influenced her bias toward my ex. We had a lengthy discussion during which she admitted she had believed my ex because of the kindness she had shown her. She had chosen not to believe me when I recounted all the things my ex had done to me during our relationship because she was unable to envisage a seemingly virtuous young woman behaving in such a way afterwards. She subsequently expressed her regret and we are now on amicable terms. My sister initially decided not to communicate with me until I assumed responsibility for my actions. However, after a few days I initiated a conversation with her and she has remained in contact. My ex-partner's account was accepted without question, despite the presentation of substantial evidence to the contrary. The assertion was made that a woman's word is of greater consequence than any other form of proof. Furthermore, the claim was made that regardless of biological paternity, I have an emotional responsibility and should act in a manner that is more aligned with traditional masculine norms. It seems that there is little hope of influencing her stance regarding my ex-partner. A review of the available evidence suggests that shortly after our separation, she began dating another individual. It is possible that she was already seeing this person while we were still together. It is unclear whether their relationship ended a few weeks later, or if she became pregnant and subsequently resumed contact with her former partner. I also discovered that she had been actively searching for a father for her child over the last 2 years, with me being the most recent candidate. It appears that she is becoming increasingly desperate, as she had never been as aggressive with anyone else before. The purpose of this post is to address the current situation. A few days ago, my former girlfriend and my sister arrived at my workplace with a large sign displaying my image. The sign accused me of abandoning my child and labeled me an irresponsible father. They created a commotion, making false claims in an attempt to shame me and use social pressure to force me to take responsibility for them. They explicitly stated that this was their intention and that they would keep it brief. I was subsequently asked to leave the premises. Despite presenting all the evidence and legal documents proving their lies, I faced consequences for the disturbance. I was warned that such an incident must never happen again or I could lose my job. Consequently, I reached out to my lawyer friend and we are currently drafting a comprehensive and detailed legal document against both my ex, my girlfriend and my sister have overstepped the boundaries of acceptable behavior, and I am now pursuing legal action against them with full force. It is my hope that this will be sufficient to make them cease their activities and leave me in peace. I am not at liberty to discuss the specifics of the lawsuit, but I can confirm that my ex, my former girlfriend, was greatly distressed when she was informed of the situation. She is currently attempting to have the case dismissed, offering to retract her statements, cease contacting me, and never contact me again. She even attempted to elicit sympathy by claiming that I would ruin her and her son's lives. However, I am no longer concerned with maintaining a positive image. She has crossed a line, and in response, I initiated legal action against my sister. Initially, her behavior escalated further when her attempts to shame me at my workplace were unsuccessful. She then proceeded to disseminate false information on social media, including accusations that I had abandoned my child and lacked responsibility. Additionally, she portrayed my legal actions as acts of censorship and misogyny. It is likely that her actions will have the opposite effect to that which she intends, as I am in a position to refute her defamation claims and her actions provide further evidence in our favor. This will be a lengthy process and we have only just begun. We had a Christmas gathering at my parents' home, which we use every year to have a large family party before Christmas. I had misgivings about attending because I was unsure of my sister's intentions. Despite my reservations, I decided to attend the gathering. This proved to be a misguided decision, as my sister was present. My mother expressed concern that I was taking this situation too seriously and that we needed to resolve it as a family. I attempted to leave, but was prevented from doing so by relatives. I was prevented from leaving by my mother, who was in tears and insisted that I was causing irreparable damage to the family by claiming that I was tearing it apart and that I needed to learn to forgive and let go. I came to understand that despite everything, even when she was aware that I was telling the truth, she was still on my sister's side. I managed to extricate myself from the situation by informing my mother that I would not attend any further family events if my sister was present. I have resolved never to attempt this again. At this juncture, nearly all of my family members are aware of my sister's actions. Some view my sister as irrational, while others believe she is mentally unstable but also feel that I am taking things too far. A couple of days ago, my mother invited me to spend Christmas with them. I was initially reluctant to accept her invitation due to her recent actions, but I ultimately decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt after she promised it wouldn't happen again. However, not only had she planned to repeat the same situation, but my brother also warned me that this time she intended to trap me until I forgave my sister and stopped the nonsense. I called my mother to inform her that I was aware of her plan and that I was done with both her and my sister. I told her not to contact me. She attempted to contact me on numerous occasions in the following hours, creating a great deal of drama. However, I did not respond to her calls when I did not attend Christmas celebrations. I am weary of playing the role of the good guy, so I have chosen to remain silent on the matter. I hope that everyone had a pleasant Christmas, and I wish you all a happy and drama-free New Year. A free New Year update is provided herewith. Many events have transpired and significant changes have occurred regarding the lawsuit. In short, I emerged victorious. We never had to go to trial. Everything was resolved through conciliation meetings. My lawyer's strategy involved a multitude of allegations ranging from harassment and defamation to attempts to jeopardize my job and parental fraud. The aim was to intimidate them thoroughly. In the event of an unsuccessful outcome, a multitude of charges would be brought against my former partner and my sister. My sister initially dismissed the prospect of such an outcome, continuing to disseminate her statements on social media. However, she subsequently reconsidered, acknowledging the potential consequences of her actions. My former partner retracted her statements, seeking my forgiveness and acknowledging the extensive repercussions she would face. Ultimately, she agreed to the terms proposed. The damages were settled out of court, leaving my sister to face the consequences of her actions. Upon realizing the gravity of the situation and the likelihood of losing, she deleted all her posts, attempting to erase her involvement. However, we had retained all the necessary evidence, including screenshots and recordings from the final conciliation meeting. She became visibly distressed, imploring me to pardon her and spare her from this predicament. However, she had the opportunity to cease her actions, yet persisted, and now faces the consequences of her own recklessness. She was required to pay me a considerable sum in addition to covering all legal expenses. My mother assisted her in making the payment, but now she bears a significant financial burden, as my father demanded. She initially held resentment toward me for my actions, but we eventually had a conversation and began to repair our relationship. While it remains strained, it is gradually healing. She confessed that initially she believed she was fighting for a just cause, defending a needy woman. In her mind, she was convinced she was doing the right thing, influenced by her friends who encouraged her to fight. She believed that by confronting me and ensuring I fulfilled my obligations, she was fighting for the sake of other women. These ideas were supported by her friends, who encouraged her to stand up to me. However, when things became too real and she realized there was no way she could win, all those friends disappeared. My ex abandoned her, and those who had offered their support wished her luck and distanced themselves. She was left with no choice but to surrender. However, she ultimately chose to concede, thus concluding the matter. For those who suspected otherwise, I would like to clarify that my sister and my former partner were not romantically involved. I am currently unaware of my former partner's whereabouts and have no desire to seek them out. She fulfilled her obligations and subsequently disappeared. I sincerely hope to never cross paths with her again. Some individuals have accused me of going too far with her, with some even labeling me as a monster for ruining the life of a single mother who I was already facing difficulties. Others have criticized me for not being loyal to my family by taking the issue this far instead of resolving it within the family at this point. I have reached a point where I no longer care. Throughout the months that the conciliation process unfolded, my mother sided with my sister on numerous occasions. She attempted to persuade me to stop, ranging from asking me to let it go to trying to she attempted to induce feelings of guilt by employing a variety of tactics, including issuing threats of disownment and separation from the family. However, despite her initial resolve, she ultimately lacked the courage to follow through with her threats. This behavior persisted for months, even after the matter had been resolved. It was not until I sought counsel from after consulting with multiple individuals, I ultimately decided to proceed with the DNA test. Following a heartfelt conversation and a promise from my father that he would accept the test results regardless of the outcome, my brother and I agreed that my mother's behavior was highly unusual. My father had grown increasingly suspicious due to her statements and implications. We proceeded with the DNA test, which confirmed that both my brother and I are indeed my father's sons. My father experienced a profound sense of relief, but was subsequently overwhelmed by embarrassment for ever doubting his wife's loyalty. He was deeply ashamed of his suspicions and, as a result, we collectively decided to apologize to her for our actions. I initiated the conversation about the DNA test and requested to be the first to apologize. On the evening in question, the entire family gathered at my father's house, seated around the table. I commenced by acknowledging the conflicts and tensions that had arisen over the preceding months and expressed my apologies for these. After all, she is my mother, but her behavior had left us all perplexed and full of doubts about her actions. Consequently, I proposed that we all undergo a DNA test. The moment I mentioned this, my mother became enraged. In an instant, her face turned red and she launched herself at me, grabbing my hair and scratching and hitting me while screaming phrases like, "Why did you do this?" and "I hate you." My father and brother had to pull her away from me, and she immediately began pleading for forgiveness from my dad. My dad was taken aback, and when he informed her that I was about to apologize to her because the results indicated we were his sons, her face displayed a mix of fear. Her reaction also revealed a great deal about her desperation. She admitted that she had been unfaithful to my father many years ago and that the affair had continued until she became pregnant with me. She was unsure whether I was the child of my father or her lover because they had not used protection and she had allowed him to ejaculate inside her on numerous occasions. She had carried the doubt about my true paternity and intentions for many years and she intended to keep it secret. This secret was forever concealed, however, she revealed herself at this juncture and the truth became apparent. This was the reason for her consistently poor treatment of me, her prioritization of others' opinions over mine. My father expelled her from the household that night, and in short order, the entire family was aware of the situation. We informed them in case she attempted to disseminate any falsehoods, which she detested. She even reprimanded us, stating that we had no right to say anything. In light of these circumstances, I was compelled to take action against her because she is our mother. The aftermath of this tumultuous period saw the conclusion of a substantial financial settlement. My brother and I remain on amicable terms, although my relationship with my sister is strained. She has distanced herself from her former friends, who were sources of considerable distress. My former partner is no longer involved in my life, and it is my hope that this will remain the case. My father is experiencing distress as a result of my mother's infidelity, but he has not initiated divorce proceedings. My mother has returned to my father's home, but he has not forgiven her. From his statements, it is evident that he does not intend to do so. He has stated that he will not consent to a divorce or to her receiving any of his assets. He has described their relationship as one of marriage without intimacy, and she is now attempting to gain his forgiveness. My mother has openly expressed her hatred of me, attributing all of her problems to me. She has stated that if I had followed her advice and accepted responsibility for the child, none of this would have occurred. I hope that she is satisfied with this outcome and that this account brings you joy. I extend my best wishes for the new year and hope that 2024 will be a wonderful year for you. I will continue to work, save, and strive. To establish a life free from the constraints of this situation, I am contemplating severing ties with my mother. However, at this juncture, I am indifferent to this prospect. I have been consulting with a psychologist on a monthly basis since becoming aware of my mother's infidelity. This has proved beneficial for me and those close to me. I am not inclined to develop a negative perception of women as a result of this experience. I am aware that not all women exhibit such behavior and that there are numerous admirable and exceptional individuals among them. Nevertheless, it is challenging for me to place trust in anyone, particularly in the context of my relationship with my father, my brother, and other women. We have attempted to, despite multiple attempts at persuasion, my father has chosen to remain married. It is therefore evident that attempting to influence his decision would be futile. My relationship with my mother is currently at its lowest ebb. Having undergone therapy and discovered the truth, I now consider it irreparable. Many things have started to make sense, such as how she consistently favored everyone else over me throughout my life. I have come to realize that she has always resented me and that all the efforts I made during my childhood were in vain. I have no intention of maintaining a relationship with her.